I am sure sports. You know me there, from coast to coast representing. I mean, I say this is righteous representing for Omar. You don't know, come get the sports over here from near and far. Boy. Me say I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. I am sure sports, one thing me sure about. When me say sure, that me not doubt. Come get your sports, get it over here. Come subscribe, repost and share. If me not sure, that me not say it. Know who score, that me not say it. Never know the game play, that me not say it. If me never seen a game, me not know who play. For your sports news, better come over here so. For your soccer news, then come over here so. If you don't love sports, still come over here. For the day done, you are gonna love over yourself.
So when it comes on to behavior concerning football, Jamaica is decent. I am sure that if we can get all of these things done, set in place by the end of April, it gives us enough time before the World Cup campaign. Not afraid of no Brazil, no Argentina with these crap of players. We are good enough. Remember, like, subscribe, share. Listen, comment, let me know what your thoughts are.
Trick Jerk Marinade gives your meats and vegetables authentic Jamaican jerk flavor. The spices are directly from Jamaica. Spices like jerk seasoning, allspice, Scotch bonnet pepper, fresh scallions, thyme, ginger, and garlic. The key ingredients to a great jerk marinade. 0% sugar and low in sodium. You want to try it?
Made up of 18 Jamaican herbs and spices, add delicious, bold flavor to your next grilling experience. Flavoring sauce, a marinade, basting, condiment, or topping. Trick Nick Jerk Barbecue Sauce.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. This is I Am Sure Sports. Welcome to I Am Sure Sports. I'm running solo this afternoon. Man is up and about and taking care of some other business. This evening, Man has a very eloquent way of starting the stream, but I can't copy Man, so we're not gonna waste any time today. We have with us our guest is one of the premier sports journalists in Trinidad and Tobago. He's the chief editor and owner of Wired868.com. And he's here to discuss football in the region, football in Trinidad and Tobago. His name is Lasana Liburd, and let's welcome him to the stream. Lasana, welcome.
Hi, glad to be on. Good evening.
Good. I appreciate you taking the time to come on so that we can have the discussion. You know, in our brief conversation, you know, I shared with you that I think the discussion is needed. I think one of the things as the program was starting, I was thinking about Lasana is from Trinidad, I'm from Trinidad, and we're on a Jamaican platform. So I'm going to say to you that, like I mentioned earlier, that when I got into this, was just to get it started and hope I could find somebody to run with it, because I think it's important that I've watched the Jamaicans do it and they've done it effectively. They have been able to keep the focus on Jamaican football, keep the federation on their toes. I think they have achieved, you know, it's not perfect. They still have some issues, but they've been able to keep things, shine a light on things. And I think there's been some improvement to the extent that they're pretty positive. I don't know if it's ill-advised, but they're pretty positive that they're going to be at the 2026 World Cup and have a good showing at the Gold Cup. So something to keep in mind if you know anyone that wants to create and have a platform like this or continue. The young man has I Am Sure Sports, and he has I Am Sure Sports Caribbean. So it's available. I Am Sure Sports Caribbean is available for us to keep the spotlight on Trinidad football, which I'm sure you would agree is important.
Yeah, no problem. And don't sell your eloquence short there either, but, but sure.
You know it is sometimes. So let's start. Could you tell us a little bit about you're a journalist, about your journey, not necessarily geographically where you're from, but where did you come from, so to speak, to find yourself doing what you do today?
All right. Well, a love for sport started a long time ago. I played football at school. That would be at St. Mary's College and at Arima Senior Com at the time, now Arima North Secondary. You know, other than some other sports like table tennis and so on. But essentially, I got a chance to go into the media straight out of school. Like, probably left, finished school in June and started at the Guardian. Probably October, the Trinidad Guardian, about October the same year after A levels, right? And it's so many moons before, as a millennium ago.
Right.
I think probably pre-cell phones even. It's a long time ago, right? And I mean, since then, of course, I've worked across the spectrum in the local media, so to speak, or not quite so much, because actually I just spent maybe a year and a half at the Guardian, and I've pretty much been at the Express for most of my time thereafter. I worked abroad as well because I had a stint in Britain, like between 2003 2006. So I worked for some papers over there as well. So I've worked at other desks too in the journalism field, not only sport, but sport has really been my calling, so to speak. I care a lot about it, and here I am all these years after, and I still call myself a journalist.
You call yourself a journalist? I think a lot of people call you a journalist.
Well, let's say I haven't traded up or swapped fields like some people do. Of course, I've started Wired 868 back in 2012, so we're going on 11 years now, for instance, and I'm committed very much to what I do in this field. Although I branch off just a little bit now because I'm involved in administration now at school level with Arima North Secondary, and with we have our own club, Arima Rookans. But again, this field does matter to me, and I still try to contribute whenever I can.
Well, I'm sure what you're doing administration in the secondary school system is much needed. But I'll say to you that what you do as a journalist is also needed, and I think it's needed now more than ever, because as I mentioned earlier, we need to keep the spotlight on things. Football doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the people, okay? And no one person or small group of people should really hold football hostage. And I think people need to be accountable, because the game needs to keep growing. The game need to keep growing, and we need to make sure that that's in the forefront of everybody's minds, because I can tell you, football has done a lot for me. Without football, football is what provided me the opportunity to go to college in America. Football has done more than I could imagine. Okay, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure. I didn't get to go to school like in so many places like you did, but I think I had a good education at Woodbrook that built the foundation, so I can come out and continue that and have that work for me. But let's talk a little bit about football in the region. Let's talk about the World Cup a little bit, if you don't mind starting there. I think you're aware that the World Cup is in North America, 2026. It's not new. It's not news to you that the World Cup is being hosted by America, by Mexico, and Canada. And And because they are host countries, FIFA's went ahead and give another 3 slots to the Caribbean region, or to the CONCACAF, sorry. So that means it gives an opportunity for some countries, islands that otherwise would be further away, to try to be there. There's 3 spots, and then there's another, they call it 2/3 of a spot, but we know it's just half a spot. So there's potentially 4 teams that could come from the region. And I'd like to see anybody from the region attend the World Cup. But like you, I'm sure you'd agree, Trinidad and Tobago would be our interest. I think Jamaica is in a good position to attend, and I don't know why to qualify. I don't know why to be there. So, what are your thoughts on what's happening right now, with Trinidad and the World Cup qualifiers? What plans are taking place, as you're aware of?
Plans taking place. Right now, we are ranked 104th in the world, as you know. We are tier 2 nation in football, literally, because we are in CONCACAF Nations B. We were demoted there, and then we missed our chance to climb out of there.
Right.
So when you talk about the expanded teams, looking to who will benefit from this World Cup, it's really hard to see Trinidad and Tobago realistically in that picture right now. I think we are some ways away from that, quite clearly. We had 2 opportunities to defeat Nicaragua, and we couldn't do it home and away. And I don't think anybody is talking about Nicaragua, for instance, being a team, a potential World Cup candidate. So then where does that leave Trinidad and Tobago?
Right.
Of course, we have qualified for the World Cup at so many levels, at senior level, at U20 and at U17 and everything else. That is some time ago. We'd love to get there again, but dreams, wishes, and horses and that sort of thing, right?
Right.
As far as the region goes, it's hard to look past Jamaica, of course, being a real contender in terms of the results they have had in the last 5 years or so. Probably you can go back further than that. Within the showcase tournament in the region, which is the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Right? You see the players, the quality players really playing for Jamaica and interested in playing in Jamaica as well. You even see some of the young boys like Mr. Whisper, Dejan Richards, and so on coming forward. And you think that Jamaica really should be a force for some time. Whether or not they get there, they would definitely be in the running. Haiti has also been a team that's not very far away for a while. They don't have that expanded pool that Jamaica has in terms of being able to send for a dozen boys who kind of born and bred in England. No disrespect to the Jamaica program. Then on the other side, you have nations like Suriname and Curacao and so on as well, and they don't have the history in football that Jamaica or Haiti does, but they're certainly tapping in now to players with 2 passports essentially, who able to represent them. So I think the region in itself, and then there's Dominican Republic, by the way, who started the professional league a few years ago, and you can see that they are growing steadily too as a football nation. So I think the region in terms of that, we sure to have at least 1 contender, maybe 2. They may not qualify, but they will be thereabouts, pushing it pretty close to get in there. I think Trinidad and Tobago 2026 may realistically be too soon for us in terms of getting things ready to really push for a place. One plus though, I think with Trinidad, that some other nations who are about kind of around the same level as us right now may not have. And to be honestly, right now, I would say that the likes of Grenada and Guyana and those nations cannot be considered to be very far from Trinidad. We all kind of close, in terms of where we are as a football nation right now. But Trinidad does have the experience of having done it. And the benefit of that, I would think, one, in terms of the coaches that we have, would have a little bit more experience of what it's like competing at that level, right? Even, let's say, Angus Eve, but who, as a player, you'd have guys like Sean Cooper and these coaches who have all competed at a pretty good CONCACAF level. And then the likes of the Kevin Molinos and Sheldon Batos and so on. But even going down to Levi Garcia and everything, they would have seen Trinidad and Tobago play at a really high level. So the ambition of a Trinidad and Tobago player would naturally, with no disrespect to some of the other nations, be higher because they have seen their compatriots play at that level. So it is not something that is unrealistic in their minds. You grew up and you see Dwight York playing for Manchester United. It should be totally far-fetched to think that, if I do the right things, maybe I would like to play for a big European club. And I suppose that gives us a sliver of a chance that maybe if we put the right things in place, we could advance quicker than nations that don't have that experience. But I can't say just yet that the right things are in place.
When you say the right things, what in particular are you referring to?
Well, one of course is administration, right? Because you wouldn't get anywhere without vision, right?
Right.
You wouldn't close your eyes and walk into the street and get where you want to go, right?
Of course.
You're gonna plan it out in your head where you'd like to be at 2 hours from now, and then you set your path to get there, right? And definitely in terms of what we have right now, I mean, at the best I could say is that the TTFA is running on autopilot right now, and I'm being very, very generous, I think, in saying that. In terms of the normalization committee, Mr. Robert Haddad and his General Secretary, Amil Mohammed, I think I'm very generous in saying autopilot because the reality is probably worse than that. So that's one, in terms of having that vision from the administrators who are the ones with the finances and the power really to put us on the right path. Below them, you have the domestic league. And if we look back to when we qualified for the World Cup in 2006 and around that period, I think the league was a lot more vibrant, and we could gauge that in terms of looking at our results, right? Where we had the likes of W Connection and Joe Public and so on matching teams from Mexico and the MLS, right? And taking points off of them, even taking a victory of those guys. The pay was a lot better, and the games were more competitive on the whole. And right now, I'd be embarrassed to say what players are being paid right now in our top flight game. And the standard is impacted. I'm sure some of these guys must have second jobs, or it has to be. It's a burden on your mind for sure. I mean, if you have children to feed or a girlfriend to take out or something like that,
right?
And just one night out is probably half your paycheck. And I wish I was exaggerating, right? So the domestic league isn't in that position it was prior. When we were getting our success. When we played at the Germany World Cup, for instance, Sid Gray was a Jabote player. Right. Sid Gray marked Michael Owen at the World Cup. Do we have players? We have players right now in the our local league who could essentially step out on a field against the best players in the world and hold their own right now. And we cannot know the answer to that. And then when you go below the domestic league now into youth development, and I still don't think it is being done the right way. There are a lot more games at present for boys and girls, which is good. A lot of youth tournaments, which I suppose is good after the pandemic, but it is not a substitute for actual training and development. And I think too often players are kind of raising themselves as opposed to really being, given the tools they need to become, professional footballers like what would happen anywhere else, right? Not that nobody, I'm not saying that no one is doing it, but certainly not enough, right? There is a high performance program going on right now with Denzel Theobald is coaching. I know Sean Cooper is also a coach there. And that is very, very good, right? Because the 40 or so boys that they would see twice or three times a week, the atmosphere, the environment that those boys are now in would be miles better than what most of them would have at their respective clubs. So that has to be a positive thing. But I don't know how much work you could do with just 4 boys, right? We need to have either a lot more clubs kind of lifting the game when it comes to developing players, or probably better yet, to have zonal, I don't want to use the word centers of excellence, but pools where in every zone you're kind of working with the best, maybe 30 boys or something like that, and that way, instead of working on 40 boys, 40 elite players, you're working on something like 150. And at that level, you could definitely see within the next 4 or 5 years, national coaches having players that are a lot more ready for CONCACAF battle. It then becomes more about exposure and those type of things to be ready, as opposed to now where the boys are pretty much raising themselves. So with all of those things, you could see why I feel we're really still a few years behind when it comes to really trying to press the best once more in the region.
Well, I'm very optimistic, and is in football myself as a coach, and know that football sometimes produce some very strange outcomes. And we were in somewhere in the East recently, and we put together a team that I thought looked competitive, at least for 45 minutes in the first game, that produced a level of football that that we need to replicate, and that I believe could bring us success. And at that time, but I think that team in particular had a lot of guys who were playing outside of the country, because I don't think the league was playing at the time, and the squad that was selected there. But it's the national senior team, from a successful national team, could fund the entire pyramid of football. So I come from the perspective that you don't sacrifice one for the other. You need development. It's critical. It's a critical part of the process, because you don't want to lose any potential, but you also want a national team that could generate revenue and could be competitive and give the younger ones hope, because the senior national team is directly tied to the pride of the people, right? The senior national team, the national team job is one of the most important jobs in the country from my perspective, because if the pride of the country is tied to the national team, that job is an important job. That person must be able to lead not just the team, but the federation, the business community, people in government. That person has to be a leader. And I think with that said, I think we can find ourselves in a position where we still have time, not to delay and ponder, but begin a process towards that, getting everybody on the table. So getting making sure that we have the right people, the vision, as you mentioned, ready to go. And I think part of it too is, let me ask you, I saw on 2 occasions, you mentioned just now that we are tier 2 country. we're playing in the B division of Nations League.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Okay. We also in the preliminary round of the Gold Cup. That's a reality. If I think back, I think that's the same place we were 2 years ago, around this
Yes.
time. It's the same place we were 2 years ago. But I've seen it advertised as progress. I don't know if you have seen that. And what are your thoughts
You're
on that?
seeing what is progress, sorry?
That we qualified for the preliminary round.
Oh, you mean
Right?
finishing second in tier 2?
Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Compared
depends
to
on how
2
you
years
set
ago.
your bar. The reality is, I mean, we got relegated in a group that had Martinique in it, right? We
Right.
didn't get relegated in a group with Costa Rica and Honduras somewhere. The group had
Right.
Martinique in it.
Right.
Then we couldn't get out of a group with Nicaragua. No disrespect
Right.
to Nicaragua. It's pretty much as fruitless as I could get in Central America, right? So I mean, you have to say based on that we in tier 2 because we good enough just to be in tier 2. That's why we're there, right? I mean, I would say I'm an optimist as well, right?
Right.
If I wasn't, I wouldn't bother writing 90% of the stories I did. I'd say what's the point, right? But when you speak about football being capable of kind of springing a surprise and you do a little bit better than you expected, and you could look as for example of that in the 2018 World Cup campaign, right? When we knocked America out, it was a fantastic result. Against a team that was, America wanted it very badly, as we know. They had a very good team, and we put tears in their eyes, right? But when the final whistle blew and America were out, we were bottom of the table.
Right.
So the reality is, yes, you're gonna get one of those results ever so often, but we're nowhere close to being in a position where that shock result is gonna put us anywhere else. Us against America in 2017, that would be like us against Bahamas. 2 or 3 years ago? Yeah, Bahamas knocked us out of the World Cup. Yeah. It didn't do much good for them, in terms of the standings, but it is a feel-good moment and that kind of thing, and that would be where we are. We might pull the toe of a big team ever so often, right? We drew goalless with Mexico at the last Gold Cup, but we couldn't get out of our group anyway. We couldn't win a match.
Right. So is the sentiment that we shouldn't attempt, not to you personally, but what do you sense is happening in Trinidad? Is it the sentiment that we don't stand a chance?
Well, we have a lot of work to do. We absolutely should try. Every team that goes out on the field has to be thinking about how to get the result. The job of the coach, like I said, you decide where you want to go to today, and then you plan how to get to that spot. So that's the coach's job to try to get us there anyway, right? It's just that they are dealing with a significant disadvantage that makes it pretty much an unrealistic hope. You still try, but what are you going to do? You can't, lie down. But the reality is that right now it's unrealistic. So the job of all the stakeholders in football is to try to put us in a position where we could realistically challenge for the things that we want and for the places that we want. And as I mentioned, Jamaica, they don't have to just show up and qualify for the next World Cup. It's nothing like that. Right. Despite everything you do, there'll be some teams who prepare very well that will not qualify for the next World Cup. Right? Because it's still not a given anyway. Yeah. But you just want to do the things to give yourself a real chance. And that's it. And we have to aspire. Other than, the team is going to go out there and try to win games, and we're going to wish them well and hope that we do win games anyway. But the reality is we know that there's a lot of work to do before we could realistically demand the things that we would like to get.
You just used an interesting word there that reminded me of the ethos: together we aspire, together we achieve. And I think that should be, if we live that, on a daily basis. If we live that, then we probably would have a chance. But the football community always seem to be fractured. If you look at the administration of football at the moment, how would you gauge, if you were to rate the administration over the past couple of years on a scale of 1 to 10? Where would you put that?
This current administration.
Yeah.
Well, on a
I
1
mean,
to 10,
they've had a lot of challenges.
I might say 0 on a scale of 1 to 10, but then I might say other administrations probably -5 because they are actively harming the association, right? I'm not going to say that Robert Haddad and company are worse than anything we ever had before, because we had administrators who were doing really bad things behind the door, right, to affect the young boys and girls in their care and the coaches and everything else. I would say Haddad is doing pretty much nothing or next to nothing, but sometimes I suppose nothing isn't as bad as doing harm, right?
Right.
But I don't rate the administration at all. I look forward to when they leave to see and to hope. Now, my hope might be kind of unrealistic because I can't really point to.
Well, hope is not a strategy, so don't hope.
Hope is not a strategy, exactly. But the reality is, until the TTFA membership, right, not just one or two supposed, strong men or dynamic guys, the entire membership has to demand more and want more, and be willing to sort of be the example of what they want from administrators. And really, that's the only time that we can be sure that we're improving. Other than that, it's just a lottery. You vote for a guy and you hope, or woman, and you just kind of hope for the best, which is what it has been for a long time.
So there's been a lot of sentiments from on the ground that people want to see them go. You just expressed it, but all of our revenue, it seems, most of our revenue comes from FIFA. It doesn't seem as though we generating any revenue to run football outside of what FIFA provides. My dad taught me that, to be a man, you have to have your own key. And he didn't mean was a copy of his key for his house. He mean you have your own, you purchase your own, you pay, and whatever the case may be. Is there anybody with the leadership qualities that would be required, that would be able to transform the federation on the island at the moment?
Well, again, like I said, if it isn't the entire membership that's kind of pushing in one direction or trying to take ownership of where we are.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. But we need a leader. We need somebody that would be able to get everybody pushing in one direction.
You know the saying, the teacher doesn't arrive until the class is ready.
Right? Yeah, no saying.
From the last three persons who went up for the presidency, which would have been William Wallace, now deceased David John Williams, and Richard Ferguson. Wallace is no longer really involved in football. I don't think he really covered himself in glory at all during his very, very brief term. As unfair as his removal was, I don't think he really covered himself in glory at all. Far from it. Richard Ferguson is an astute businessman. He knows how to make a noise, but there's very little about the way Terminex Rangers does his business. And how he does his business, that would make me say I would want him to have that sort of power in charge of trying to make good football on the whole. I would rather not, if I were to be blunt. So it's hard to see out of the traditional places you may look, anyone being involved, anyone who could make that difference, right? But there are always people a little bit on the periphery, sorry.
Well, before you call names, if you're going
Okay.
to do that,
Thanks for sparing me that.
no, you could go back there if you want. But what type? Because you have to know what you're trying to achieve, right? What type of leader, in your opinion, is required to take this organization from where it is to where it potentially could be, where we could be having a discussion that that doesn't suggest that we can't qualify for the World Cup before we even step on the field. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What kind of leadership do you think is necessary?
I think for me, the leader should be somebody who could get people together in terms of to get people on the same page. Somebody who could inspire confidence, both inside the organization and outside the organization. I don't think the vision for the TTFA should belong to the leader, really. I think it should be the vision that we all have in terms of the stakeholders, right? So the TTFA president really should be more of a figurehead person to me, right? The person who represents us, not represents himself and his own ideas, right? Which is why I keep kind of pointing to the collective membership of the TTFA. But I think right now we definitely want somebody untainted, because we've had too many scandals in the past. So we definitely want somebody who's untainted and somebody who you feel is trustworthy. So I suppose that would be a good starting point. In terms of all the let's say the knowledge of football and that sort of thing, I wouldn't. That may not be a plus at all, because we thought we had that with David John Williams, for instance, who was a club president and everything. And how did that go? Because he thought he was the smartest guy in the room. He never was. And, he only ever really listened to his own counsel, right? So we really don't want somebody who just wants to implement their ideas, but, somebody who could, just kind of get the whole membership humming a bit, I would say.
Right. When you describe that type of leader, is there anybody, any names, anybody that's on the island? Because the Constitution right now only suggests, correct me if I'm wrong, that the person has to be living in Trinidad for X amount of years, right?
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you think has those qualities that would be willing?
Trinidad and Tobago, you know as well as I do that there's definitely brain power here. There's intellect here. There are definitely people who could do the job, right? If they are willing, if they could get through an election, because sometimes I suppose the best leaders and the best president may not be the best person in an electoral setting where you're trying to get somebody to come out and vote for you. Within the football fraternity right now, I guess I'd probably have to say nobody comes to mind, really, right? Within the only place they would look, which would be the different heads of the zones and etc. and so on. So I suppose I would just leave it as no there. But for me, hopefully, the person who does take over, who challenges the position, hopefully is somebody who is in football right now, who has the personality I want and the intellectual capacity, but they simply, I suppose, haven't taken up the mantle just yet, but hopefully that they'll be encouraged and inspired to give it a shot when we need them to.
Well, I hope that we can find the right individuals You mentioned exposure
When the
earlier.
class is ready.
Said it, yeah?
When the class is ready.
When the class is ready. I hope the class is ready soon.
Yeah.
You mentioned exposure earlier. You mentioned the high performance program. Football in the region. I remember my older son winning a under 19 or under 20 Caribbean Cup.
Yeah.
Caribbean Cup in Trinidad. It was played in Trinidad, and that was the last one, I believe, that was played.
That was the last one they won. That's the last trophy we have lifted in Trinidad football. Yeah.
Right.
2013, not 2014. It was 2013, right?
Right. But some people might argue they won the game against Guyana the other day with the 3 games.
I wouldn't take those people seriously.
So, football, we have CONCACAF and we have the Caribbean Football Union. And we did one of these conversations. I don't know if you saw it with Kamara David discussing the Caribbean Football Union and their role in football in the region. They have a strategic plan on their website.
I was going to say that must have been a short interview discussing the role of the Caribbean Football Union and football.
You could go back and look at it. What I want to ask you is, it seemed to me as though CONCACAF is running football in the region, because it's difficult to see that CFU is playing an active role in football, and it has a president in Randy Harris. Kamara David is there as the Gen Sec. It's a organization that's being funded by FIFA as well, receiving, I believe, based on FIFA's information, about $2 million US to run that organization. What do you know what a day is like for these guys in terms of running the CFU?
Running the CFU?
Yeah.
I don't know if the CFU does anything for anyone in the Caribbean, right? I saw recently they launched the CONCACAF, was it champion, we call it now. And the prize money for clubs there is $5 million US, right?
Yeah.
But they mentioned earlier the Caribbean leg of this competition. There was no talk about prize money at all, right?
Right.
How much of that $5 million US makes it to the Caribbean, right? Who needs it more?
Right.
When you're talking about the big MLS and the big Mexican teams, or you're talking about Harborview or AC Port Spain or whatever it is, who needs those resources more? And who has there are 35 nations in CONCACAF, 10 in North and Central America. So how are they the ones to decide how everything is divvied up, right? I made a point recently that our World Cup qualifying campaign right now that CONCACAF does, the whole format of qualifying is pretty much segregation. Nowhere else in the world you have a situation where out of probably about 30 full FIFA member nations, and 27 of those have to compete for months to get the opportunity to play against the other 3.
Right.
Where does that happen?
Right.
I think, and of course none of those 3 it goes without saying, are from the Caribbean, right? I think the way right now North America has everything. They have the market, they have the television, they have the political power, they have the purse strings, everything, and the Caribbean has nothing, right? There's pretty much no trickle down.
Right? Well, I think we had that, right, not too long ago. Everything that you just mentioned, we had that, and it's unfortunate the person in charge in CONCACAF right now is from Canada. So he's going to take care of Canada. When that deal was mentioned, outside of and you're right, outside of the quality of the games that's going to be played, I know that a memo went out here saying to the stakeholders, this is what this means to us, right? As a country. I didn't see, nobody was aware of anything that went out in the region saying this is what this agreement means to us, financially, in terms of games, whatever the case may be. So who's representing us at the table in those conversations?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
yes,
you have in UEFA, the UEFA president, for instance, and his whole campaign really has been about helping fund the smaller nations, right? The Slovakias and the Andorras and the whatever it is, and essentially getting it trickled down, right? Simple as you have the UEFA Conference League, so you create a new third-tier competition.
Right.
It tries to give us a more even spread of the television rights and so on. Now, it's a balancing act, of course, because he has to keep those top clubs happy. And we saw there was almost a breakaway in Super League and everything.
Right.
But at least you see him, somebody there, actively, looking out, at least to wet the beaks of the smaller nations, so to speak.
Right.
And in CONCACAF now, 25 nations in the Caribbean, and you have to ask yourself, who's looking out for us?
Right.
Randy Harris and Kamara, David have gotten something for themselves out of it because they have an office, and I suppose they get to travel now and then and so on. So they are doing okay, good for them, good for those two. But the Caribbean on the whole, I don't think anybody can say that Caribbean football is doing well. So I would really be, I don't know how they could say anything else with a straight face right now. Which would be, like I said, the CFU leadership right now. I think it's a disgrace is the only thing I would say, because there's very little that we get in the Caribbean over CONCACAF.
Well, and that's unfortunate. Let's take a question from someone in the comment section. I refer Morris. Said to Liburd, what do you think about Jamaica program presently? Is there any element that TNT can adapt?
All right. Well, I'm not sure here when they say program if they're speaking to the Jamaican domestic leagues, or if they're referring to the Jamaica, the international program.
I think Reggae Boys is when people talk about Jamaica football, I think they talk about Reggae Boys. We can safely assume that.
Yeah. To be honest, I felt like Jamaica would be a lot further along than they are right now at international level in terms of the rest of the Caribbean. Jamaica is above Trinidad and Tobago in football right now. That's taken for granted, right? But at youth levels and so on, when we meet Jamaica, and there isn't that feeling of inferiority on our side. I think when we saw the tide started turn at the turn of the millennium, really, when Jamaica started to really get on top of Trinidad and Tobago at international level. But it would generally be at senior games, again with squads kind of, with increasing numbers of players who were not born and bred in Jamaica at all, right? So I'm not trying to take away from Jamaica's success, because it's excellent where they are and that they're competing. But
you will get some pushback on this forum, I'm sure.
No, but what I'm saying, right, is I think that something to me is still missing at Jamaica national youth level, right? It's fine to import players to kind of boost your program. Nothing wrong with it at all. But that should really only be a temporary fix, right? While you're developing your own guys. So as much as we do see Whisper and some really, really exciting young talent coming up, that's true. But I felt that Jamaica's youth teams should really be up there a lot more than they are, taking on the big dogs in tournaments and everything else. So I don't think Jamaica has really set the standard in terms of the federation there. In terms of the domestic competition, though, I think that they seem to be a lot more organized than Trinidad and Tobago, and we would have been the premier domestic league with the W Connections and Jablotes and so on. A decade or two ago, I think Jamaica, they're definitely streets ahead of us right now when it comes to the domestic game. So I think we could definitely learn lessons in terms of how Jamaica was able to get, the clubs and the stakeholders kind of together in terms of the domestic product and what they get out of there. I think we could definitely learn from Jamaica there.
Yeah, I think if we could learn from anybody, right? So you just have to
pretty much
have humility and say, well, I want this and I want that. I don't think we have our own mix up, as they call it in Jamaica, so I don't think we need that. Look, I took some time the other day, and I needed to know after the under-17 CONCACAF tournament. So I went back the last 10 years and looked at both countries at the under-17 level, okay, playing in the CONCACAF tournament, and between 2011 and 2023, and Trinidad didn't qualify in 2017. So throughout the 10 years, Trinidad has won 21% of their games at that level and lost 63%, tied 16%. So that's out of 20 games, 19 games played. Trinidad won 4, lost 12, and tied 3. Okay. And Jamaica, because Jamaica had 1 year more than Trinidad, so they had 22 games. They won 6, lost 9, and drew 7. Right, so with a 27% win rate. So the gap in terms of wins is not that much bigger at the youth level. And I think both countries should be doing much better and they should be competing, because we see the bigger countries in the region keep evolving. So
and again, I mean, we are 104th in the world right now, so we understand, we know where we are. Jamaica is a lot further up the ladder. I mean, I haven't seen them recently. They're so high up. I can't tell you where they are because we but the reality is, like I said, their youth teams really aren't doing as well as they should be doing either, to me. So that's definitely something that they should look at. I suppose we are only just getting started. Again, I pointed out that the high performance team, for instance, is a good start, right? But these boys have been training now for going on 2 years, and you know how many international games they have had? 0. They haven't had a single game. They've just trained for 2 years. I don't know that they have left the country even on a single tour.
They're getting ready to compete in a tournament in August.
Yes.
Right. That's a tournament that we have. The last one we played was when the late David John Williams was president. But at the under 15 level, I don't think we have ever won a game.
We haven't. But again, if we go back to time gone by, in the last, it has to be the last century now, yes. But Dwight York played his first international for Trinidad and Tobago at 10 years old against Venezuela, right? A player like Russell Latipi, by the time Latipi was 16 years old, Latipi had a lot of stamps on his passport, right? He would have an under 14 team, back then would travel and that sort of thing. So it is a start that we have a high performance program at all. Like I said, it's definitely much better than those boys would have had been exposed at the clubs, but it's well short. Not only is it short of what the world standard is, it's not even up to our standard in previous years. Imagine we're in 2023 and we're not even doing things as well as we did in probably 1991. And that should say a lot.
Why is that? So we've gone backward.
We have gone backwards.
Is that what you're saying?
yes, we have gone backwards.
So I asked the question on 2 occasions. Do we have less opportunities today for young people than we had when we were growing up? And people seem to want to say, yes, we have more opportunities. But I'm speaking in football, specifically for Trinidad and Tobago. And for me, it looked like we have less opportunities
Yeah,
because
because the boys aren't equipped to take the opportunities that are out there. They just aren't. So in that sense, I would say yes, less.
So I know that you're involved in a project in Arima,
Yeah.
right? Your Arima project.
Uh-huh.
And it's taking up a lot of your time. What is your goals? What is your
Well, in this case, I'm really playing a supportive role to Wayne Shepherd, who is the head coach and he's the technical director, so to speak. Who is is a former national youth coach, just briefly because the pandemic made sure his team never played a game or anything like that. But I would say
was he the national youth coach?
he was assistant coach in the under 15 team. Yes, never actually got a game.
Right.
But I think he's a talented coach. I think he has a lot of his strength really is in developing as well. I think not his only strength, but when you look at the national youth teams right now and you see the number of players, for instance, who come through Fatima College, there's a point about that last year, and Wayne would have been there when that program essentially got started at Fatima College, and a lot of those boys would have probably been like maybe 12, 13 years old when he left Fatima, right? So that's a strength of his. And the idea now is that we do something similar in East Trinidad in terms of starting with boys as early as we can, as early as our resources allow, which right now would probably be around, maybe 11, 12 years old. And just trying to give them the fundamentals in terms of their technique and everything, game understanding, and expose them to the tactical play and etc. Right? So I'm really in a supporting role there as administrator, and trying to contribute. But that is what we are trying to do. It's pretty early, but I think if Arima North makes any noise in the Premier Division this September, because we just got them promoted, that would be a nice advertisement, I guess, for the work that we're doing in Arima.
Yeah, player development is a very it's a huge task. If the expertise that is required at that level is tremendous, because you're getting young people at an age where you can influence who they become, not just as footballers, but as people, as productive members of society in the future. So a holistic approach, it does require some resources. And not just it requires financial resources, it requires emotional investment, it requires a lot of things that sometimes we can't, that's not tangible, right? To be there for them, to understand how these kids exist, who they are, how they are living at the moment, what challenges they might have. And that's and I can say that to you because I've done that for the past 10, 11 years, and knowing the individuals that you're working with intimately, so that you can help them grow, and coaches themselves continuing to educate themselves so they can keep up with the changes.
And I should point out here that on our staff as well, we have Lyndon Andrews, who was a former Trinidad and Tobago footballer, and he played professionally in Hibernian and so on in Scotland, Premier League. And Lyndon Emmons, and like you said, it's a big investment of your time and everything. And I think those two have really a very good connection, emotionally and otherwise, with the players. Right. So that bit is the fun bit, dealing with enthusiastic boys who want to learn.
Right.
You know, like I said, getting the resources is a challenge. So that bit isn't too much fun. You know, trying to get that buy-in from corporate Trinidad or otherwise. But it's a good team, and as far as the bit on the training ground and around the boys, that bit is very enjoyable.
Well, that's work that is worth doing. It's such an important role to play. I see A.M. Henry is saying here, a Jamaican is a Jamaican wherever they are. We don't import players. One Jamaican, domestic and international.
Fair enough, but they would not have been developed on the island though, and I think you would want a situation where you have your own. Okay, I'll put it like this: when Bailey, for instance, plays for Aston Villa and does well, that is a sign that Jamaican football is able to produce a player of that caliber, and I think all around Jamaica, coaches should be giving themselves high fives and pats on the back and so on. And look what we were able to put out there.
Right.
When Michel Antonio has a terrific game for West Ham, it doesn't say the same thing about Jamaican football because he wasn't developed in Jamaica at all, and that's the only difference. So I'm not questioning the fact that those guys are still, deserve to wear the shirt because of their backgrounds and everything. Absolutely, they deserve to wear the shirt. It's just that one speaks more to what the football body is doing as opposed to the other.
Well, I hope they hear you because I hope they hear you. Somebody saying, can you all lend us some of your resources, especially your stadiums or fields? And I had this discussion with management before. There's a belief that we have. Yes, we do have some stadiums, but we don't have. Do we have, unbelievable playing surfaces that you watch your pro league? I watch your pro league a lot, and I look at the surfaces that they play on, and I'm sure you would agree that they can be better.
They can be better. Here is relative because yes, we do have. I have been to some of the big stadia in Jamaica, and I think the playing surfaces are inferior to Trinidad.
In this moment?
Sorry?
In this moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, remember right now, though, with the domestic football you're seeing, essentially all our major stadia right now are already being renovated anyway. I would say that definitely we need to do more in terms of our upkeep of venues. So we kind of maintain a certain level. When you look at some games, they look at the playing in a desert or something like that.
Right.
But I would say still, if it comparing with Jamaica, we do have better venues. Obviously, Jamaica's success shows that in itself, doesn't say that much, right? There are other things that probably have more input in terms of successfully as a football nation, because Jamaica is still certainly very much more successful than Trinidad and Tobago. But as the Jamaica coach, I wouldn't try to pronounce his name right now. I didn't prep on that.
Coach Algrimson.
You're a very eloquent man, Andre. But as he pointed out, in terms of player development, you're going to go a lot further with better fields, because you want a field where boys are encouraged to pass and move type thing, and it rewards skillful players more than it rewards strong, aggressive players. Because on a bad field and you're strong and aggressive, you can have a field day because it's difficult for the player to collect and make a move with one touch because of how bad the field is, right?
Right.
So
it slows the game down.
It slows the game down because you generally need more touches. And the problem with developing, right? If you brought a player, a Verratti or a Busquets or something, for instance, right? They would be able to play on the Jamaican surface, right? And look good. Not as good as if they were playing on a very good pitch, but they would still look good because they learned their craft already, right?
Right.
if you develop it as a young player, you're 12 years old, and you're playing on a pitch where you have to look at the ball all the way, and you're looking for the bubble, and you need an extra touch to control. You're never going to develop to be a player like Busquets or Verratti who could play the ball in one, because in your developing years you can't do it.
It's very interesting that you said that, because I have spoken to people on the island who seem to suggest that you're in a better situation if you are training on these bad grounds, because when you get the good grounds, you're going to be better prepared to perform.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting now that the money that Tottenham and Arsenal and Barcelona and even here in America, Atlanta United and all these clubs that they are spending to have the training pitch, they're missing out. They're missing out, right?
Yeah. They need to destroy the pitches, you know.
Yeah. They should not have
something to teach them, right?
Right, and they should be in the Caribbean looking for players. Look, I agree with you. There's a difference with living in the favelas in Brazil, for example, or living in Beverly Hills in California. The environment, right? So
I've been to Brazil, and I've been to Fluminense and those grounds, and the Fluminense ground is an absolute carpet. So if they think that the Brazil pitches are horrible, they have something else coming.
No, but what I'm saying to you, in terms of your human existence, you feel better if you're in a nice environment.
Okay.
You feel better, right? If you're in a nice environment, and I think that we should be working to create an environment. This is how I put it. Lasana Liburd should want for every kid that he coaches the same thing for as he would want for his biological children.
Yeah.
Right? At the same level. The best of everything. Best field, dressing room, balls, training kit. It's all part of it. And I don't think you can give up.
Yeah, but how I would answer those guys though, Andre, I would say that if you could go on that pitch that they're talking about, and if both teams could play at pace, two-touch football on that bad pitch, then great. If they can't do it, it destroys his argument, because you don't learn. You're learning to play the game requiring 3 and 4 touches. I mean, you're not gonna go on a nice field and suddenly become a 1 and 2 touch player. That's not how it works. So I think he kind of it's that thing where we tell ourselves, look, Russell had to be played on bad pitches and so on, but that isn't true. We're missing part of the story, and we kind of fooling ourselves with that argument.
It's sometimes we seem to get into a place where we become defensive as opposed to accepting that we could do better or should be doing better. I don't think it's a question anywhere in the world that having a very good surface for training and playing is an important part of the process, because there's also a safety aspect of it as well, right? You're working with young people, and you want them to be, your first responsibility is to make sure that you have a safe environment. That's the number one responsibility, and that's part of it. So, but I wish you luck with that program. I know player development is a difficult thing, and you all have a job ahead of you. And hopefully, Arima North could do well. We have the Gold Cup coming up. We're in the preliminary rounds. I think there's a practice game or a friendly, so to speak, in a few days.
Yes.
And then there's a game against Guatemala. And if the result goes our way, then we take on Guadeloupe, sorry, not Guatemala, yeah. Guadeloupe, yes, thanks. And we take on the winner between Ghana and Grenada, I believe, to try to get into the Gold Cup. We had the same situation a couple of years ago, and we were able to get into the Gold Cup and have some success. Then, how you feel about it now?
Well, we take it one step at a time and try to win games and hope for the best, right? We're not in a position where we could say that we should get anything. We can't say that we should, enjoy this success or so, really. We have some good players. We have some players not quite at our level anymore, because the reality is we don't have a lot of players playing top flight football anymore. All the same, Coach Angus Eve has his job that he took up this post with certain deliverables in mind, and he has to try to find a way to deliver. As much as I wouldn't say those games are cakewalks at all, but all the same, they are winnable, and it's up to him really to set the team up in a way that maximizes our chances of getting a result. I think it's a very it's a winnable passage of games, I think, to get into the group stage. But that doesn't mean we are even favorites per se.
Right.
And I do expect us, even if we get into the group, again, I do expect us to go beyond that. That to me would be unrealistic.
It's interesting. Morris is mentioning here again, we'll never abandon our nationals, no matter where in the world they were born. It's interesting. I have said to a few people that I've asked, why do we not, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, because this is an important point that he's making here. Why do we not stop referring to people that represent Trinidad and Tobago as foreign and locals, and refer to them as Trinidad and Tobago internationals? I think it's divisive to begin with, and it places. I read an article this morning, and it was set up that way. It was set up that way, and it places almost like that the local players are more valuable, for a lack of a better way to put it. Do you think that changing that narrative, the way we talk about, because at the end of the day, if I can talk about my kids, I'm from Trinidad, my wife is from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, my wife is where would our kids be from? Who would they be? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
1 + 1 is 2. 1 + 1 is not a half, right? So how do we as a country, and that's why I find the statement here to be very committed. How do we as a country continue to have a conversation about somebody who's a group of young men who's making a decision to represent a country because that's where their parents were born, and we refer to them as outsiders? Do you not think that that's a language that should change?
Absolutely. I don't think we should refer to the players who make that sort of commitment. I mean, a lot of the players who come to represent nations in the Caribbean try to help us to get to the other level. I mean, they didn't need to really show up at all, to be honest, right? They also sacrificing in terms of coming to play here. At the same time, you're always gonna have. I don't. When I say foreign base and local base, I mean personally, I don't think it ought to be considered in a derogatory manner to either side, because to be honest, the local base boys say the same thing you're saying. They're saying that when you say local base, you're kind of reducing them. But if you're in, let's say you're in England, and there's a squad called up, and they are the boys from, let's say, the Champions League quartet, as opposed to the boys who were not in the Champions League quartet. I mean, they're always going to have something or the other, that might differentiate a player from another.
Right, but they're English internationals, or they're Spanish internationals, Spain internationals, or
that's what you see here. I guarantee you it's the exact same. If you talk about the players, let's say in Spain, for instance, and the boys who are Real Madrid, Barca, as opposed to Sevilla and Athletic Bilbao and so on, and those guys will also tell you that people act as if the national team belongs to Real Madrid and Barcelona. We just don't see it because we just not that close on the ground there, right?
Well,
But
I like to say I escaped colonialism, so I kind of feel that we can be leaders in certain things, right? And because we're smaller, we have tremendous potential, I believe, to do a lot of things different or right, if you want to put it that way.
Is it right though? Because if you're reporting on a game, right, all 11 players are Trinidad and Tobago international players.
Right.
That's a given, right? When you're talking about 23 guys that are selected, and you put the names about 23 and you put the clubs, and some of the boys next to the club is going to say Greece or France or America or Sweden, right. And that's not supposed to be derogatory at all. It's just a fact for people who want to know more about the players on the team.
That is okay. There's nothing wrong with that because that's reality.
Yeah,
that's a fact. Levi is playing in Greece. That's a fact. You can't. But when we start to create a narrative, and we start to talk about local base and foreign base, and I think my personal thing,
I probably need an example of what it means in terms of the. I know it. I mean, look, West Indies cricket, for instance, and you would hear they talk about how many boys are from Barbados and how many are from Guyana, so on. So I know it could. There'd always be people who, kind of discriminate, I guess, for want of a better word, in some way or the other. But in this case, though, when you speak about, I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I do know that, of course, they're all international players, and everyone selected should have that respect, and that they all have the same goal, which is to try to make, whether it is Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica or Guyana, whoever else, they all go out there wanting to win matches for the country.
They all want to represent the country. They all expected to go out there and run hard and perform to help the country be successful. And I think there are times that the narrative could be, because at the end of the day, one of the things that I think a couple of you have pointed out is that and that's why I think this is so important, the work that you do, and if we can figure out how to expand it so that there's a more regular conversation. It don't seem as though the public is aware of the players, except for if they play in the local league, right? I get messages all the time from people highlighting the comment. I'm not a social media guy, so I'm not on social media, so I don't see these things firsthand, but it's something that maybe you should take a look into it and see, if you can see it from a different angle.
Yeah, well, I mean, fans will be fans, right? If you're AC Port of Spain fan, you show up for games, and Shea Benny is, to you, doing very well. You want Shea Benny in the national team, and that's it, And if you had Rangers, it might be a Talagera, So you look at it from that point of view, in terms of fans just wanting, the players they see, they think that they are the best players on the planet almost, there isn't much analysis that really goes into that, other than he saw this boy have a great game at phase 2 in Lakota yesterday, so why shouldn't he be on the national team? Just fans being fans sometimes.
Yeah, if we follow like the young boy Balogun who plays for Arsenal, that just committed to playing for the USA, and if you follow the history of how they get him to play for the USA, it's a process, right?
Yeah.
And that's a top player at Arsenal. And we have Henry saying the US did not call Balogun a foreigner. They claimed him because he was born there, but grew up and developed in England. We must get away from using these.
But you see, these are big terms when they say the US and they. Who would be the they that claimed them? I could tell you for sure that America has been having this discussion about local and foreign-based players for a long time as well. In terms of, let's say, MLS players, and they also have the same complaint that, why aren't there more MLS players in the national team and why they're bringing back all those guys. It is the same, most places. Any country that doesn't have a situation where all the players come from within their own local league. Brazil has had this conversation for decades because they also go out and they see the guy from Flamengo and they're saying, why are you bringing back that guy from Tottenham when we have the guy from Flamengo right here and so on. So we're just not close enough to the situation to appreciate that, but it isn't far different. It's sometimes just fans being fans.
I'm sure it didn't matter in Argentina a few months ago.
Yeah, but it mattered before, because before, you know what, they call Messi a foreigner too, and they said that Messi
but they got it together,
Barcelona, etc.
Right, but they got it together, right? Because there's a very good, and I don't know if you, sometimes they make some things available and some things not. There's a very good documentary that BBC did on the Argentina journey. It's a good look. About 58 minutes or something like that, but it's a good watch in terms of how Argentina got to where they are, how they went through that process with the new coach. And they say fans will be fans, right? They didn't want the coach that they have. The fans didn't want him because he wasn't a elite. He wasn't a big name, a big personality, big character, right?
He barely coached before, to be honest.
Right, but he was a leader. He was a leader, which is, from a point earlier, the importance of that job. He came into the job, and as the story went, he came in, he went to Messi and said, what do you want? What do you need to make you function, right? To help us be successful. So I think sometimes, we just need to make the adjustments, how small they might be, to help us to put people in the right frame of mind so that they can come and compete. They can, whether it's Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Jamaica, or Trinidad and Tobago, right? When players show up.
Well, you could say we have been there and done that, because we were in a similar situation back in 2005. We had Leo Ben Hacker as coach, and we had some top players who, like Messi, were a bit long on the tooth at that point in time. But there was no doubt that these were high caliber players. When you're talking about Dwight York and Russell Latipi and Shaka Hislop and Stilton and everything else, right now we need more than tweaking, right? You could tweak when you have Dwight York and Latipi in your team,
Right.
Right now we have to till the soil, so to speak. So we at a different stage in developing a team to be successful. But we would have been in a situation too when Ben Hacker was trying to figure out where could he use Dwight York to get the most of what was his real premier player, and he found that spot in midfield, as we know in the end, as a midfield super.
Right. If you study that part of that particular experience and how brilliant he was in the way he handled the squad that he had to work with, that in my opinion, you talk about the game versus Sweden. Was it Sweden when we got a red card and he had to make some adjustments? Most coaches would go defensive, right? He went aggressive and made the game almost seem as though it was even. I was in the stadium and it was just fascinating to watch. It's so we have a lot of work to do. I think we can agree to that. We can agree to that. We have a lot of work to do. We haven't touched the women's game. We haven't touched Tobago because we talk about a high performance program, but that's happening in Trinidad, right? What's happening in Tobago? When I show who our most successful coach is throughout history, right? He is from Tobago in Coach Sinclair. Right. Our most successful player is from Tobago, right? So a lot of times the conversation is dominant on Trinidad and Tobago, the high performance program. I've not heard anybody say that it exists in Trinidad. So I might be wrong, I don't know. But a lot of times Tobago is not part of the conversation. I think they've, just those two stats alone, right? They have
Yeah.
earned the right for us to continue to look in those spaces for talent, whether it be coaches or players. We got to look all around the island and elsewhere as to see if we could find the best group of people to give the people, the population, the fans, something to feel good about. I mean, this is what international football is about, whether
Yeah.
it's youth football or
I would agree with you that we're denying ourselves the chance to, we're not making the most of the talent that we have when we don't involve Tobago the way we should, and we haven't involved them properly for a very long time. But I would say, even when you say Trinidad, I mean, we aren't really doing such a great job in Trinidad either, right?
Right.
I think I would say when our programs started to be centered around the Attobolan Stadium, for instance, I think it created a problem because it's probably one of the most difficult venues I've ever had to travel to. It's very, very difficult to get to.
right.
And when your team trains in one spot, almost like totally, you don't go around the island, right? The amount of money a young boy from any far-flung area, it could be Carenage, it could be Mayaro, it could be Arima, the money you have to put out to train twice a week in Cuba would be beyond a lot of parents.
Right.
But this isn't new. I would say it must be like 10 years or more. We are no longer fielding our most talented young players because they can't afford to be a national player, essentially.
Right.
Because not enough is put in place to get our talented players to these venues. And I think the national youth teams themselves ought to rotate venues to have a better chance of seeing talent elsewhere, and also to be more fair on the boys, because even if they were training in Port of Spain, and you have your boys pretty much nearby, St. James and so on, and they may spend $4 to get to a session, and then they have other boys who spending $20 and $40 a day, and that's not fair either, right? So it is not good at all that Tobago is being ignored, and there hasn't been a Tobago team in Trinidad and Tobago's top flight competition, the Pro League, the TTPFL. There hasn't been a Tobago team in that for, probably more than 10 years, for instance. So a Tobago player has to leave his home, find a place in Trinidad to stay, and whatever it is, to have any chance of playing at the highest level. And right now, the salaries are something like $1,200 a month. Could you leave your house and go to a different island and so on and stay by whoever, and you get into it's not enough to pay rent,
Right.
But that is where we are right now.
Yeah, and I'm sure that this a lot of things that we experience is not unique to us. When Belgium was not doing well, they spoke to every federation that they could have spoken to who was having success, and they benefited from that tremendously. Iceland pipped us for being the smallest country to be in the World Cup. They went through a process as well to make sure that they could find the best talent in the country. Some may say that we are doing that. Are we doing that? Right? Based on what you just shared, it's impossible to find the best talent. So how could we overcome that?
Trinidad doesn't have a professional sport environment on the whole, right? They are probably outside of the TTFA General Secretary. There are probably very few, if any, full-time administrators. I would think right now there are very, very few players, if any, who could support themselves in Trinidad based on football. And I think that most of the business world still see sport, and the government still see sport as a hobby more than actually a profession. So and that will always limit us, to me, right? I mean, on the whole, I would say that the curse in the Caribbean would be young men and women who want to be the very best in the world, the Usain Bolts, and our administrators do not want to be the best administrators in the world.
Yeah.
They just want to get a ride off the athlete.
Right.
So you have young boys and girls aspiring to be the very best, and you have officials who think it's okay to be mediocre, right?
Yeah.
But I think that we don't really have an environment that would allow football to thrive yet. I mean, probably the only sport that could do that might be cricket, and probably just the limited version cricket, because in that case, you could probably pay salaries just based off of gates, and it could actually sell television rights and so on too in limited overs cricket. But outside of that, in sport in the Caribbean, you always kind of get by based on patronage, you know.
Right.
And it's not a professional environment.
It's depressing to hear that, because I think if the environment, look, when you sit in a room, if you're involved in sports, I'm sure, you know, you're now part of an organization that's dealing with young people. When you go to make a decision, if that young person, that young boy, or that young girl, is at the center of that decision, right? I believe that changes a lot. If I'm going to make, I can tell you for 11 years now, I've made decisions in regards to football and young people, and I've never made a decision on anything other than what is best for these young children, right? Not about money, not about me, my time, or whatever the case may be. It's always about what is best for them. So if this is best for them and it's going to cost me more, I'll pay more. If this is best for me and I'll have to sacrifice going and watch my kid play on a weekend, I'll do that, because that's my responsibility. Because in the end, you want them to realize the full potential.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we're in this, right? You're raising. They're not all going to play professional football. They're not all going to play in college. But what you do want is them all to become productive members of society, whatever they do. So every moment that you spend with them, every decision that you make about them must be about them. You must know about them. So I think I don't know. I am, and I'm saying I don't know, but I'm saying from talking to people, I don't ever get the sense that is what is happening.
Well, let me say that
you said it yourself just now that with administrators, people want what's best for them to get around it.
No, that's one way to look at it, right? Would be in terms of what is morally right, which is excellent, and you want people to think about that. They do unto others as you would want them to unto you type thing, which is great. We know that that most of the world doesn't think like that, right? But yet at the same time, look, Lionel Messi just went to Inter Miami, and they are not giving Messi a terrific salary because they want Messi to be even better, better off, and for his great grandchildren not to have to work or anything, right? They giving him that money because they believe the value that Messi brings, right, is gonna lift their club and lift everyone as well, right? When let's say Chelsea or Manchester invest in their youth players and the academy and everything like that, and it's not just that they want the boys to have a good upbringing, but also because they think that if we invest this amount of money and we're able to get 2 or 3 players out of it, and it pays for everything that we do and we turn a profit, right? So at least even then they understand the importance of investing in people for the benefit of all eventually. And it's really interesting that in the Caribbean, more officials do see young men and women as somebody worthy of investment, even if you're not doing it because you want the guy to have a good childhood.
Right.
Even if you're doing it because, listen, I'm doing this because I want to reap something out of it. But
Right.
at least you understand that if I make the player comfortable and if I deliver these things and he's in a better position to do well, then we create a situation that could help me as the football association president or as the club president or so on in the long run too. But to do that, you have to have that level of vision that thinks beyond 2 years or 3 years. You're thinking 5 and 10 years down the line. So you understand why you're investing and what you want to get out of it. And I think we need more officials with vision, essentially.
Well, it's and you couldn't say it better. And I think that's where we need to develop on the administrative side of well. We often talk about developing football. Look, sometimes these things could go on for a long time. The guys in Jamaica sometimes have they go on for 3 and 4 hours. I've got to practice there 10. Hopefully we can do this again and touch on some more important things. We haven't discussed the women's side of the game. The under-20 team just failed to qualify in the last tournament just a few weeks ago. There's a lot to talk about and not talk about it from the perspective of just pointing it out, but hopefully people would hear and probably heard something that make them look at something a little bit different and change, because we need, look, a lot of young men is dying on the island every year and they look like me and you, right? 200 to 300 people that we should be working really hard to avoid. And some people talk about it callously, but it could be anybody, right? They look like me and you, is our children at the end of the day. And sports is something that has saved a lot of young people in terms of opportunities. And I heard Jamal Shabazz talk about it before, how many players that they lose to crime because football was shut down. Because football was shut down before the pandemic, right? The pandemic didn't shut down football. I think football was shut down before that. And because we don't have sports, guys go and look to make a living in other spaces. And it is our responsibility to try to minimize that or get rid of it totally. And so hopefully we can have this discussion again. I don't know if you want to say anything in closing, and we can keep the conversation going. I think I want to talk to you a little bit offline about if you have any thoughts of who might want to have these conversations.
Okay. No, all I would say is it's been a very enjoyable chat. I never mind, fielding questions on football, which is something on sport, which I obviously I care deeply about. So right. I don't mind being quizzed because it makes me also kind of think about stuff that's going on, everything else. So it was a good chat, and hopefully listeners and viewers enjoy the chat as well.
Okay, man. Keep up the good work, and thank you for coming on. Okay.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Well, viewers, we've come to the end of today's chat, as Lasana call it. I hope that everyone enjoyed it, and you guys tune in again tomorrow. I'm sure Man is Man will be on tomorrow morning and talk to you guys in the future.